Hi, this is Aisha, and welcome to a new video of Read a Day Club. If you watched my previous video, I left out two books in my November wrap up, and those two books I'm going to be talking about in this video. So, the first one is Juan Rulfo's Pedro Paramo. So, this edition is the most recent edition. It is translated by Douglas J. Weatherford, and this one has an introduction which is written by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The previous edition had an introduction which was written by Susan Sontag. So I haven't read that edition or that translation. So I can't wait to read that translation too. So, where should I begin with this story? It completely consumed me. I compulsively read it cover to cover. I did not even pause to underline anything or annotate anything. And of course, there are a lot of things that you want to annotate in a book like this, but I didn't want to stop reading it for even a minute. It's so irresistibly good. The writing is just so beautiful. It's written so well. It's so beautiful, so vivid. I have underlined something at the start of the book, but that's it. This is on the very second page. It was during the dog days of summer when the August winds blow hot, tainted by the rotting smell of flowers. The road rose and fell. It rises or falls according to whether one's going or coming. For the person who's leaving, it rises. For the one who's coming, it falls. Pedro Paramo defies any kind of categorization. And by that, I mean that you can't really fit this book in a single genre. The atmosphere that it creates is so haunting and eerie. It draws from Juan Rulfo's own experiences of rural Mexico. So, the town that the story is set in, the town of Comala, becomes as an archetype of a harsh, desolate, bleak, and hopeless landscape. And because of its multi layered narrative, and just, because it's a blend of real and supernatural elements, of course, it is a work of magical realism too. You can read it as a complex, existential, gothic, and even modern fiction because it embodies aspects of each. When I say haunting, I mean it quite literally because everything you read are the voices of dead characters. And this isn't a spoiler in any way. At the back of this book, it says that Komala is a town alive with whispers and shadows that seems populated only by memory and hallucinations. So, as the book explores this divide between life and death, it explores life as it is lived when one is alive and life being lived after one's death. Juan Rulfo blurs the boundaries between the experience of life and that of death. His characters are trapped in their own mortality, so to speak. So everything you read feels like a waking sleep of sorts, where your dreams and your nightmares make up the fabric of reality. And because the story is set in such a deserted and isolated town, time comes to a screeching halt. So it's as though time itself is dead, and the characters are meant to carry this dead weight of time around, which is written so vividly, but at the same time, it becomes so jarring, it becomes so haunting, unsettling. Everything has been so vividly described. And another thing that really stood out to me is how unsettling the story is. And this is because of the way that the story has been written. It's constantly tense, it's fragmented, it just creates this sense of unease that builds up from the very first page. Rulfo is very particular about the words that he uses, and I know I'm reading a translation, but it feels like he doesn't over describe anything. He doesn't water down his characters or his setting or the story. And even when there are no words being exchanged between the characters or memories being described, the silences that accompany those gaps are also so intricately described that in itself feels very haunting and unsettling to read. What I also really liked was how the story has been stripped of any kind of sentimentality or drama. And what I mean is that all the things that are happening, all the things that have been described have been done so in a very raw, unfiltered manner. And because everything has such a strong physical presence, which is ironic because the characters are ghosts, it really gets under your skin. You can't stop thinking about it and makes you feel restless almost. The story jumps between characters, memories, voices, moments of a person's life and death. So it's constantly keeping you on edge, it's constantly keeping you off balance. And you, as a reader, can never fully understand what's happening, what is going to happen. And that is just so brilliantly done in such a short story, really interesting to read. And at the end of it, I think the story clings to your own memory in a very ephemeral manner, if that makes sense. It's as if the story itself is a ghost. So you can't really recollect the details of it, but what it made you feel, it's the atmosphere that it creates, that the weight of it, it just stays with you. It lingers in your memory for a very, very long time. I felt the same way when I read Sadiq Hidayat's Blind Owl, and when I read Too Loud a Solitude by Bohemia Rebel, which is also a coincidence in another way because both books are short. And all these things work perfectly for me because it just means I can read these stories over and over again. Even if I forget them those many times, I will read them countless times and they will always be a part of my reading journey. The thing is with literature like this, even when the story takes your breath away, and very, very, very likely the story will, you don't really understand how that happens. It has a very sensory experience. I don't know if that makes sense, but like you feel the story in your skin. You feel it. You can hear the silence, you can hear the sounds, you can feel the textures of the world, that the town of Komala that comes alive and haunts the people and just the history of Komala. So all of that, you feel it as a sensory experience. I can't tell you a single thing. I can't pick out a single sentence that contains everything that the story does. You just have to read it, compulsively read it multiple times, and like the nostalgia that it creates is very haunting. So this is something that I read in the introduction. In Pedro Paramo, where it is impossible to be entirely sure where the line between the living and the dead is drawn, any precision is all the more unattainable. No one can know, of course, how many years death may last. So that is Pedro Paramo. And it's quite a coincidence because in the introduction, Gabriel Garcia Marquez says that he didn't feel so when he read Pedro Paramo, he was completely smitten by it, and I think he read it twice or thrice in the matter of a single night. And he hadn't felt this way. Yeah, twice. He read this twice. The night I couldn't sleep, that night I couldn't sleep until I had read it twice. Not since the awesome night I read Kafka's Metamorphoses, which is it was such a beautiful coincidence because the next book that I'm going to talk about is Kafka's short stories, which includes Metamorphoses in the Penal Colony. Colony. I can never pronounce colony. Penal Colony. I can never pronounce both those words at the same time. So I read it on my Kindle. Um, Interesting thing about this Kindle is it has been with me for 10 years, exactly 10 years, because I got this for my 18th birthday. My sisters gifted it to me, and tomorrow is my 28th birthday. So it's exactly been 10 years since I've had this Kindle with me, and it's still in such great condition. I still read books on it. So, anyway, I had read Metamorphoses at the beginning of my reading journey. It was one of the first philosophical classic fiction that I had read. And I can't believe I waited this long unknowingly uh, without reading the rest of his short stories, which is In the Penal Colony, The Judgment, The Stoker, Hunger Artist, and First Sorrow, Last Sorrow, First Sorrow. I think it's I think it's First Sorrow, and A Country Doctor. The Judgment is about the relationship between a father and a son. So now when you read a little bit about Franz Kafka, you understand that he too had a very tumultuous and intense relationship with his father. So that really makes this reading The Judgment even more gritty, even more so because it's relatable. So Kafka writes a very authoritative father and how that has sort of a negative impact that sort of cripples and suffocates and just negatively impacts and haunts, I would say, the son's sense of self worth. So it's dark, it's psychological, it's anxiety inducing. And just like his other short stories, it presents a reality in which a perfectly or imperfectly ordinary character is thrown into this abyss of forces that are beyond his control. So the character eventually succumbs to feelings of helplessness and existential dread. And that's exactly what The Judgment does. The next one is my most favorite. I think after Metamorphosis, this is my most favorite short story of Kafka, and that is In the Penal Colony. I still can't get over my experience of reading it. I can't believe I waited so long. It's so good. It's so dark, gritty, grotesque, and dehumanizing. The story is set in an unspecified penal colony. I think it's in an island, and it follows an unnamed traveler who visits this island. So I think he's an anthropologist, and he visits this island as an observer, and he is shown the intricate workings of a very elaborate execution machine by the penal colony's officer. So, this machine tattoos the condemned prisoner's death sentence on his entire body. So, it's a very slow and agonizing death. So, this is horror that you can't look away from, because it's not just the punishment, but what underlies it, what embodies it, what carries it forward. All these things, So Kafka drills into the themes of just human suffering and how human suffering under when one's individuality, so in this case, a prisoner's individuality, is being stripped of meaning and essence. And so the execution, the punishment becomes a very unfeeling and impersonal and dysfunctional thing. The writing really isolates you, as in, the reader, because everything that Kafka has described it's in such excruciating detail that you can't look away. He brings it to life. He brings that machine to life. You feel as though it already exists somewhere at some sadistic part of the universe. And also that you can't help but feel that the story is dystopian almost, because it is set in such a desolate and morbid time. And the officer who is explaining the way that the machine works to the traveler in itself is in a kind of trance, because he's so fanatic. He's fanatically devoted to the way that this machine carries out a prisoner's death sentence. So he's so feverishly consumed by the mechanism of this machine. He is just devoted to the beauty of it. The most sadistic part about this machine is that it constantly keeps feeding the prisoner food so that the prisoner is alive for each and every minute of it. Every little detail that I give you makes this story feel even more gritty and grotesque. On one side, you have the officer who represents this sense of complete abandon of one's individuality for something that, it's just like you're trying to create meaning out of something that is inherently meaningless, and you get so obsessed with it that you lose yourself completely. And that's exactly what happens with the officer. And on the other side, you have the protagonist, who is the traveler. He maintains a sense of passivity, which is very existential, because he is caught between his moral responsibilities as a human being to want to convey the injustice, brutality of this machine. But on the other side, because he is a foreigner, he is a tourist in this colony, he can't really affect any change, or he feels like he can't affect any change. So there is this constant tension between moral responsibility and just understanding and realizing one's own limited control and power in an indifferent and chaotic world and a system. Everything just becomes absurd and in a very Kafkaesque manner. So one of the definitions that I could derive from all these stories, of Kafkaesque, is just where you are trapped in a morally ambiguous and bizarre situation where you are unable to act out of any moral responsibilities. So you realize your own limited power and, to affect any kind of change in an indifferent and absurd and meaningless system. So in the judgment, that was the son's acceptance of his own surrender and defeat in the face of his father. And if you read his other short story, which is Hunger Artist, so this is a man who works as an artist, as an individual artist who starves himself, and that is what he does. That's his performance. And with time, with the gradual loss of interest in the act performs his art, he's also surrendering and giving up and resigning without actually taking any kind of action to affect change. So you see these parallels across all his short stories, and that is so interesting and existential and absurd. And in the penal colony is a place where both meaning and morality is obscured. You're just caught between what's right and wrong, because the story doesn't explicitly come to a conclusive ending in a way that, that gives you any kind of certainty or that gives you any kind of resolution. So you too are swaying between those two extremes. So everything just ends up feeling obscure and bizarre and absurd. A story like this will definitely make you feel uneasy, but at the same time, it also forces you to question your own understanding of authority, justice, morality, just the human condition under this light. And of course, it also throws you to the limits of human empathy concerning crime and punishment. And it's really interesting how such a short story can convey so much. I believe that in stories like these, when you read Vidhu Paramo, when you read Hunger Artist, when you read In the Penal Colony, stories that are haunting and unsettling and intense, I feel like they contain a nugget of psychological truth that other kinds of stories don't or rarely convey. It's difficult to find such clarity on the human condition elsewhere. And of course, you can interpret such stories in so many different ways. That's the beauty of them. I mean, you can read them on a deeply personal level and feel repulsed or disgusted by it or disturbed by it, or you can read them in a very detached manner, sort of like an observer, and then derive meaning from it in a very objective sense. And that is precisely why I love reading such stories.